Have you ever felt so completely overwhelmed, so burned out, that it starts to feel like this deep spiritual crisis? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dig into a really powerful idea inspired by the work of Okbemin Osugio. What if the answer to that massive feeling of dread isn't some huge revelation, but something way, way simpler? Let's get into it. Okay, so let's start here. This has got to be one of the most shocking prayers you can find. I mean, this isn't just someone having a bad day. This is a cry of pure, unfiltered despair. It's coming from the prophet Elijah, and he is at his absolute breaking point, literally asking God to just let it all end. So the question is, how on earth did he get to this point? To really get the weight of this, you have to understand the backstory. This wasn't a man who was used to failing. We're talking about one of the most powerful prophets of his time, and he was fresh off the single biggest victory of his entire life. And what's just wild is how fast it all fell apart. I mean, just imagine this. 1 minute, you are on top of a mountain, calling down actual fire from the sky in this epic spiritual showdown, and you win. The very next minute, you get one single threat from the angry Queen Jezebel, and it sends you literally running for your life. That threat sparks this all-consuming fear, and he just runs, alone, deep into the wilderness until he completely and utterly runs out of gas. He is just done. Physically, emotionally, spiritually spent. So there he is, right? Collapsed under a tree in the middle of nowhere, asking to die. Now, in a moment of crisis this deep, you'd probably expect some kind of big, booming, divine intervention packed with wisdom, right? Well, what actually happens next is the entire point of this explainer, and honestly, it's not at all what you'd expect. Just look at this contrast. On the left, you've got what we, and probably Elijah himself, expected. You know, a lecture, some kind of spiritual correction, maybe even a tougher assignment to snap him out of his funk. But look at the right. Look at what God actually provided. It's almost shockingly simple. It's physical, food, water, and rest. That's it. No sermon, no complex theological lesson, just the absolute basics of what a human body needs to survive. And this just shows you what the priority was. This wasn't a friendly suggestion. The very first instruction from heaven was for him to take care of his exhausted body. In fact, it was so important that after Elijah ate and slept, an angel literally woke him up and told him to do it all over again. Why? Because the journey ahead was just too much for him in that depleted state. He had to get physically right before anything else could happen. Okay, so this is where we get to the core principle, because this is where this ancient story becomes a really powerful lesson for you and me. It's all about the massive difference between our physical condition and our perception of reality. This right here, this is the official language of burnout. This is what Elijah was feeling, and in that moment, it felt like the absolute undeniable truth. He truly believed he was the only one left, that all his work meant nothing, that he had zero strength left to keep going. But here's the question. Was that actually reality, or was that just what his exhaustion was telling him? So after Elijah has eaten and slept twice, God finally addresses his despair. Elijah makes his case. I am the only one left. And God replies with this number, 7,000. There were 7,000 other people in Israel who hadn't given up. Elijah wasn't alone. He wasn't even close to being alone. And this is the light bulb moment. Get this, those 7,000 people were always there. The threat from Queen Jezebel hadn't magically disappeared. The facts on the ground were exactly the same. The only thing that had changed was Elijah's condition. By simply restoring his physical strength, he was finally able to see his reality clearly again. His exhaustion had become this lens of despair that colored everything, and rest just wiped it clean. So this brings this incredible old story right into our 21st century lives. Before we jump to the conclusion that our job is impossible or our life is a mess, the lesson here is to pause and run a really simple diagnostic on ourselves. Think of it as a 3-question check-in inspired by Elijah. First one, and it's almost embarrassingly obvious. Have I actually rested? Have I slept? It is so fundamental that we just blow right past it. So before you decide you're in some hopeless crisis, just ask yourself, am I just running on a massive sleep deficit? Am I physically worn out? The second question is just as basic. Is my body properly fueled? Am I trying to run on fumes, on caffeine and stress? Or have I actually had a real meal? Our brains and our bodies need actual energy to cope with problems. And it's so easy to mistake a lack of fuel for a lack of hope. And finally, number 3. Have I had any mental rest?
In our world of constant pings, notifications, breaking news, and demands on our attention, our minds almost never get a moment of true quiet. Stepping away from all that noise for a little while isn't an escape, it's essential maintenance.
So all of this leads to one final, really powerful takeaway. We live in a culture that's obsessed with the hustle, a culture that can sometimes make us feel like rest is a sign of weakness or laziness. But this story suggests the complete opposite is true.
And that right there is the wisdom of the pause. So often, the clarity we're desperate for is waiting for us on the other side of rest. The next time you feel like you're at your breaking point, that you're facing a crisis you just can't solve, maybe the most strategic, the most powerful, and the most spiritual thing you can do isn't to work harder or push through it. Maybe it's just to eat a good meal and get some sleep. The solution you're searching for might just be waiting for you when you wake up.